Russia has accused Turkey of being the main supplier of weapons and ammunition to Daesh terrorists in Syria. Russia's ambassador to UN, Vitaly Churkin, said in a letter to the UN Security Council that 3 Turkish foundations were supplying weapons and military equipment to Daesh terrorists. He said Turkey's National Intelligence Organization oversees the transfers. According to Churkin, $1.9 million worth of explosives and chemicals has been smuggled across Turkey's border to foreign-backed militants. Russia, which is carrying out an aerial campaign against Daesh and other terrorist groups within Syria, has on several occasions accused Turkey of buying illegal oil from Daesh. Russian military planes have repeatedly targeted trucks used by Daesh to smuggle. Now, to talk more about this, let's go to Tony Gosling, investigative journalist. Tony, it's good to have you here with us on the program. Now, how significant, in your opinion, is the letter by the Russian representative to the UN at a time when more and more evidence of such irresponsible activities by the Turks are essentially resurfacing?
Well, irresponsible is the word, isn't it? And it's not just into Syria that the Turks have been exporting terrorism. Also, interesting to note that Turkey sent Ibrahim el-Bakri to Belgium, who was one of the people, apparently, we're told, responsible for the bombings in Brussels last week. So rather than detaining people, it seems that they're exporting terrorism to the countries around them. It's really important, I think, to see the documentation involved with what the Russians are saying. And they have actually been studying this very closely since their engagement, short engagement, it has to be said, fairly short compared to the American wars, very short, in Syria. So you've got weapons and ammunition. Is it, I think, $1.9 million worth of explosives, and not forget chemicals, because, of course, if you're going to use chemical weapons, you need chemicals to the ISIS-Daesh terrorists over there. I think what we're dealing with in Turkey, it's becoming pretty obvious, is a rogue dictatorship. It's only dictatorships that send the police in to close down opposition newspapers. Opposition is healthy in a democracy, and actually it keeps the whole country going and at ease with itself. But Erdogan in Turkey is not interested in that. When there's evidence against him and his family, he's sending the boys round to close down the opposition newspapers. And what's more important for people like me, journalists struggling in a way in Britain, because we cannot get a lot of our news out on the BBC here, is the digital archive also disappearing. Lots of evidence there about the crimes of Erdogan and his family gone. And also, not to forget that Erdogan's son escaped from Italy recently on forged Saudi passport, and he's wanted in Bologna. So, you know, it seems amazing, doesn't it, that you've got a country, Turkey, which is in a military alliance with most of the European countries through NATO, and wants to get into
pinpointing
the
on that alliance that you just underscored. Now, being part of the NATO and an ally of the US and the UK, why is it that those countries who may not be completely happy with the way that the country is being run by Erdogan aren't doing much to essentially salvage the reputation of their former ally, or present ally, that is Erdogan?
Well, I think they've set out on a mistaken mission of regime change in many countries in the Middle East. They've got away with it in Libya, and to a certain extent, lesser extent, probably fair to say, in Iraq. And they're rather peeved that they haven't got away with it in Syria. Actually, a lot of big Western corporations, certainly the Western military manufacturers, the arms companies and the oil businesses, want to overthrow Assad in Syria, and so they have wanted to use Turkey and the MIT, the Turkish intelligence service, to help them do that. I'm afraid the chickens are coming home to roost now in Turkey, and the complicity of the Turkish government in supporting terrorism in the region, in supporting effectively what is the balkanization of the Middle East. The chickens are starting to come home to roost. Also, the terrorism that's going on inside Turkey, definitely becoming a failed state. Look at some of the recent attacks, which have been claimed by something called the Kurdish Freedom Falcons, the TAK, which only appeared last November. Many people, even inside Turkey, including people at the Zaman newspaper, which was closed down by Erdogan, are starting to say, well, hang on a minute, this looks like a counter gang to us, something that's been set up by the Turkish military, by the Turkish government, by big Turkish companies, in order to mimic the Kurds, because they have a kind of gang which pretends to be Kurdish that carry out bomb attacks, then to give an excuse to the Erdogan government.
Tony, let's not drift
Kurds.
away into that area of the way the country that is Turkey is being run at the moment, but pinpointing on the story that is a discussion of this, segment. Well, as an investigative journalist, do you happen to know anything about those chemicals that are being purportedly smuggled into Syria by Turkey?
Look, it's important to remind everybody that the chemicals for the Ghouta attack, it's now clear from the United Nations, Carla Del Ponte, and also through Seymour Hersh in the United States have pointed out this came through Turkey. Turkey has been aiding the terrorist attack, which nearly caused the West. In fact, there was a vote here in London about it to go in with the military into Syria. The main game here, I think, is to try and persuade the NATO countries to get militarily involved, and the Turks are starting to fail to do that. And I think they're possibly a bit dangerous at the moment because their strategy is failing and they haven't got a plan B. But it's really good to see that the Russians have evidenced this accusation of the Turks aiding ISIS, because it's starting to become clear, the scales are falling from the eyes of people in Europe now, that actually ISIS is a creature of NATO and Turkey and not just a homegrown thing. It couldn't survive on its own. And I say very well done to the Russians over the last 5 months for starting to clip the wings of this crazy ISIS beast.
Okay, Tony Gosling, I want to thank you for your contribution here.